Hello, good evening to everyone. Today we will learn something about the common anti-nutritional factors in animal feed is concerned, and we will see what are all the classification of the anti-nutritional factors that are present in the animal feed, then the mitigation property of these anti-nutritional factors, then also the adverse effect of these anti-nutritional factors on the animal health is concerned. So coming to the actual topic itself, so the anti-nutritional factors, or they are also known as ANFs, are compounds in foods that tend to reduce the availability of the nutrients. So nutrients may be anything: carbohydrates, proteins, and minerals, then also the other nutrients like the vitamins, etc. So these anti-nutritional factors, they play a vital role in determining the use of the plants for the human beings. And most of the time the plants evolved as substances to protect and prevent themselves from being eaten by the predatory animals like the cattle. So this is one of the thing. It is self-defense mechanism of an animal, of a plant, to defend itself. Hence, anti-nutritional factors are also the defense mechanism of a plant material against the predators. Hence, they may contain the different anti-nutritional factors which are listed later for the protection of the plant growth, etc. Then, the anti-nutritional factors in feeds are those substances present in the diet which themselves in the metabolic products arising in the system interfere with the feed utilization. Number one, reduce the production capacity of the animal or affects the health of the animal. So, as the name indicates, anti-nutritional means they are against the nutritional substances of the animals. So, these anti-nutritive substances in total are referred as the toxic factors. In the other words, they are present in the feed and cause the deleterious effect on the animal which consumes a particular feed. So these are the chemicals, maybe the alkaloids or varieties of diverse chemical in entity in nature, may be derived from the plant or also from the mycotoxins, fungi, and many more things, sources or endotoxins. And we will see what are all the classification of these, particularly the anti-nutritional factors. So the classification according to their chemical properties are done simply based on the proteins. Number one anti-nutritional factors are proteins, or these are known as the protease inhibitors. And another factor which is also belonging into the category of the proteins is heme agglutinins, and they are also referred as the lectins, whereas the group 2 contains the alkaloids, not the glycosides. Then these are the example of these plant derived products are the saponins, then the cyanogen or cyanogenic glycosides or glucosinolate. And we know that the cyanogenic glycosides are one of the most toxic anti-nutrition factors. And if an animal consumes a plant containing the cyanogens, immediately it will cause the death of that particular animal because of the inhibition of cytochrome oxidase enzyme, which is involved in the exchange mechanism of oxygen from the erythrocytes to that of the cells of entire body. So these are all the important and most dangerous anti-nutritional factors. So group 3 is the phenols. Once again, it is also derived from the plant origin. The gossypol, which is present in the cottonseed cake, is an important anti-nutritional factor which causes the hair loss, and many more toxic effects, and also the sometimes the tannins. So tannins always bind with some of the nutrients and cause the malabsorption of the nutrients, especially the minerals, vitamins, and other essential amino acids. Whereas the group 4 is also called as the miscellaneous anti-nutritional factors, which do not belonging to any of such category of the anti-nutritional factors. So these are called as the anti-metals, means some of the metals are also required for the growth of the body and also as nutritional supplement. And many type of the vitamins starting from the fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, K, then vitamin B complex like B1, B6 and B12, and many other vitamins are being inhibited by the anti-vitamin factors, and we'll see what are all those anti-vitamin factors. Then some of the time the another classification is also in the uh, this domain, and they affect directly or indirectly. So these are not directly acting, but they sometimes may act indirectly. So the substances depressing digestion or metabolic utilization of some of the important proteins. So proteins are the very much important things and building blocks of the cell, and these are the protease inhibitors, and the example is trypsin or chymotrypsin inhibitors, because as we have learned in the protein digestion, the trypsin and chymotrypsin are very important in digestion of the nutrients, especially the proteins. They are going to convert the protein into polypeptide chains and break the polypeptide chains into different amino acids. And amino acids later are absorbed into the circulation and utilized by the liver to form the required protein, which is as one of the very much essential nutrient to the animal. And the another thing is the heme agglutinins, or they are also called as the lectins, and they make the erythrocyte to have the clumping, and because of this clumping, the normal oxygen carrying mechanism of the erythrocytes will be lost, and saponins are the one which form the foam, or a lot of foams are formed, and because of this saponins will bind with many of the required body substances. They also known as the anti-nutritional factors, and some of these which depress the digestion or metabolic utilization of the proteins are also polyphenolic compounds. So polyphenolic compounds, they are actually the natural compounds or exogenously derived substances which always inhibit the utilization of proteins from the animal body. And the second one is the substances reducing the solubility or interfering with utilization of the minerals, micro and macro minerals. We know lot of micro minerals are also required to the cattle, and macro minerals. Among the important minerals that is required are the calcium and phosphorus, and the phytic acid is going to inhibit many of the substances which are very much essential minerals required to the body. Whereas the oxalic acid, as it's a very well established lag, the calcium is going to be combined with the oxalic acid and going to cause the calcium oxalates, and thus inhibiting the absorption of the calcium into the circulation and causing an artificial deficiency of the calcium, especially to the animals which do eat the fodder contain oxalic acid. And another thing is the substances which inhibit the utilization of the minerals is the glucosinolates, especially they are also known as thioglucosides. So these are also going to block the absorption of many type of the minerals, and the gossypol, a popular anti-nutritional factor which also inhibits the absorption of the minerals, or sometimes it also interfere with the metabolism and also the carrier protein mediated mechanisms which carry certain minerals especially inside the body, and thus all these things are going to hamper the growth of the animal which is going to eat the food which is contaminated by all of these materials. And sometimes, on the basis of nutrients, they affect directly or indirectly the substances, increasing the requirement of certain vitamins. So, these are the substances which are going to cause the artificial deficiency of certain vitamins, and these increase the requirement of the vitamins. For example, anti-vitamin A, anti-vitamin D, anti-vitamin E and K. So all these are very important lipid soluble vitamins, or the vitamin A is very much required for the body to maintain the reproductive cycle, the skin texture, and other things, whereas the vitamin D is required for the calcium homeostasis. Vitamin E is a antioxidant in nature and protects the body tissues from the deleterious effect of certain toxicants, whereas the vitamin K is very much required for the clotting factor as one of the intermediary substances. So these substances increase the requirement of certain vitamins like A, D, E, K. Then apart from this one, some are also there which inhibit the especially the absorption or multiple type of the actions which artificially increases the requirement of vitamin B1, vitamin B6 and B12. So thiamine deficiency or the vitamin D deficiency always occurs due to the consumption of breaker forms, and also the vitamin B12 deficiency is a very common thing in case of the human beings. And the nicotinic acid is also being reduced by certain anti-nutrition factors. And another thing is the substances with negative effect on digestion of carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are the chief or the most uh, number one sources of the energy requirement of the animal, and if the energy requirement is not met, totally the production and reproductive capacity of the animal is drastically decreased. Hence, the example of one of these substances is the amylase inhibitors. The another one is the phenolic compound, which is actually the regular constituents of the cattle feed. Not, and the most of the time the phenolic compounds are the secondary metabolites of most of the plants. Then another thing is the flatulent factors. Sometimes the very succulent fodders like the lucerne etc., if they are administered to the animal in excess quantity, then they may cause the foaming effect. Then the animal suffer from flatulence or the bloat or the tympany etc. Then this may become sometimes the dangerous thing also to the animals. Then the flatulence factors are the oligosaccharides, which are fermented by intestinal bacteria in the large intestine, especially the flatulence factor. The monomers of these sugars are converted to the volatile fatty acids. Then, as usual, the carbon dioxide, hydrogen, then methane, resulting in the flatulence or the bloat or tympany. Or subsequently, some of these factors may also cause the diarrhea, and in case of monogastric animal, it may cause the nausea. And many times this also causes the abdominal cramps or abdominal pain and lot of discomfort to the animal. And this is a very common thing that is observed in case of horses, and the horses do always suffer from the colic. Colic is a very serious condition, especially in case of the horses, whenever there is the food do contain the flatulence factors, the horse do suffer from the colic. And management of colic is one of the toughest factor, especially in case of the equidae family. Then substances that stimulate the immune system means sometimes the animal's immune system is stimulated by certain substances, then the body will overreact to the either allergens or sometimes to the exogenously administered substances. So the effect of feed antigens are going to increase endogenous protein secretion. So the body also produces lot of proteins by utilizing the different amino acids. Then the increased endogenous protein secretion will be made by certain substances. Then there will be a lowered apparent protein digestibility. So protein digestibility depends upon the varieties of the enzymes, and also in case of ruminants, the ruminal digestion takes place. Especially the microbial digestion takes place, which converts the protein into the nitrogen substances. Then also it is going to be absorbed into the by the ruminal bacteria. Then the inactivation of feed ingredients like the heat. Sometimes if we administer excess heat, then it is inappropriate. But sometimes it is also required because many times the humans do cook the food, but the animal do not require any cooked substances for the faster digestion. But during the cooking process, lot of enzymatic treatments and other thing, many of the nutritional factors will be lost. And a hot ethanol extraction may be used for the inactivation of the feed antigens. Then the group 1, the proteins. Let us know what are all the proteins which inhibit the nutritional factors. The number 1 is the protease inhibitors. So this is one of the most popular term that is known to the nutrition students especially. So the protease, if it is present, it has got the ability to inhibit the proteolytic activity of different digestive enzymes. So different digestive enzymes are present, especially in the stomach, starting from the stomach till the end of the intestine, and such enzyme activities will be inhibited by the legume seeds. For example, the soybean seeds. Even though soybean is one of the better proteinaceous material, but it is going to cause the deactivity or the decrease in activity of many enzymes. The kidney wheel is another proteinaceous material. Then the moong dal or moong wheel is also going to inhibit the protease, especially the enzymes. And hence, such materials should not be fed to the cattle to the higher extent. Of course, they can be present as part of the cattle feed, but the quantity to be consumed by the cattle should always be limited to a certain extent. Then we will see what are all the heme agglutinins which are present in which type of the feed, etc. The number 1 is the soya bean, then the castor bean. Castor bean is also one of the most toxic element, and other legume seeds. Other legume seeds contain that the heme agglutinins because, for example, if a castor bean is administered to the animal, then there is a chance that these may cause the sudden death. Of course, the castor beans do also contain the castor oils, which are having the super purgative activity. But whenever the castor bean cakes are consumed by the cattle, then they may suffer from different type of the toxicities which are due to the presence of heme agglutinins. So what these substances are going to do? They are going to inhibit or combine with the glucoprotein, which is causing agglutination of the cells. So the mechanism is like this, and the heme means it is the erythrocyte. It's related to the erythrocytes, and these are all belonging to the category of the lectins. So the lectins are also the important substances which cause the hemagglutination inhibition. Whereas the group 2 is the glycosides. So, among the glycosides, varieties of the glycosides are present, including the cardiac glycosides, and one among them is the saponins. Saponins are also the glycosides, and these are characterized by bitter taste. So, as the name indicates, saponins means the substances which do have the soapy property. So, foaming in aqueous solution and hemolyze RBC. So, these glycosides are present in lucerne and soybean. So, these lucerne and soybean, if they are feed ad libitum to the animal, then lot of foam is produced by the Lucerna leucospina. Then also these soybean. Of course, both of these are very good fodder, but they are very succulent in nature, and also they do contain the saponins. Where- Whereas the upon excess feeding up of the green lucerne, the legume forage saponins lower the surface tension of ruminal content and leading to accumulation of gas in the digester. This is called as the bloat. So bloat is always an acute condition in case of the animals, and if the produced gas is not escaped out of the rumen, maybe due to the erectation, then it causes a sudden pressure on the diaphragm, and in turn they cause the pressure on the respiratory tract, and there is a chance that the animals may collapse suddenly. Hence, the blow is an emergency situation, and many times the farmers do not know the excess feeding of the legume, especially the lucerne, etc., should not be done. And many farmers have lost their cattle by the excess feeding of the lucerne. So this condition is already it is very well dealt, and the line of treatment are so many, and immediate attention of a veterinarian is required to relieve the frothy bloat. Always bloat is called as the frothy bloat, and whereas the tympani is the one in which the froth is not present and simply gas is trapped in the rumen. That's also a dangerous situation. But whereas the treatment of the tympani may be done to some extent simply, whereas the treatment of the bloat is a difficult task. Then the group second are the cyanogens or the cyanogenic glycosides. So they are highly toxic substances. So they liberate the hydrocyanic acid, and it is also known as the prussic acid by enzymes usually present in the same plant or as they are being digested by the animal's glucosides. So, whenever the cyanogenetic glycosides or cyanogenic glycosides are ingested by the animal, so it is being acted by different type of the enzymes, and huge quantity of the HCl is released, and it is going to be absorbed immediately into the circulation, and suddenly it will bind the cytochrome oxidase enzyme. So the binding with that of the cytochrome oxidase enzyme will always inhibit the release of the oxygen from the erythrocytes or the hemoglobin to the cells. And even though the erythrocytes are very, very rich in oxygen, they cannot donate the oxygen because it will be in a different stage because of the glycosides. And the examples of the uh, glycosides or the cyanogenetic glycoside containing materials are the almonds. Then the jover means not all the jover, only the pre-blooming jover is going to cause the sudden death because of the release of the HCl. So many cyanogenic glycosides are there, just like the dhurin, lotustralin, and the many more. Or linseed do also contain the cyanogenic glycosides, and cassava or the manihot, and many more, or about more than 120 type of the plants, and many shrubs and bushes do contain the very popularly known as the cyanogenetic glycosides. Whereas the group 3 is phenols. So phenols, always whenever we remember phenols, and we should give the example of the tannins. Tannins are one of the important anti-nutritional factors with molecular weight which is more than 500. So tannins are two types. One is hydrolyzable tannins, means these can be directly hydrolyzed by the water or enzymes and can yield galatonins and another substance known as allergitannins. So, gallotannins and allergitannins are two important compounds which are produced by the hydrolyzation of the substances to yield galatonins. So, apart from the hydrolyzable tannin, another tannin is there that's called as the condensed form of the tannins, condensed form of the tannins. So these are flavonoids or the flavonol also. Then chlorgenin is a polyphenolic compound, polyphenolic compound which contains multiple phenol compounds. So this is present in the sunflower seed meal. So the sunflower seed meal do contain the tannins as an anti-nutritional factors. So it is found in also the sorghum. Then always in case of pre-blooming sorghum should never be administered to cattle as it contains very high quantity of the hydrocyanic acid. Whereas if the farmers do proper take care of the cattle, then accidental ingestions of hydrocyanuric acid poisoning will be stopped. And since this being the topmost plant-induced diseases, we need to give an importance to such things which are having the anti-nutritional factors. Then the different things also this tannin is also present in sorghum because sorghum is a very commonly used feed as a cattle to have its nutritional requirement. Then sal seed meal is another thing. Then mango seed kernel. So this can also be used as alternative source of the feed. Whereas the mustard oil, so this is being wasted. The mustard oil cake are usually not palatable to the cattle. Hence, many times we need to force the cattle to eat the linseed meal or mustard cake. And another thing is the lucerne meal are also produced by the nutritionists. Then group 3 phenols continued is the gossipol. So this is an age-old toxin, gossypium. Then gossipol is present in pigment glands of the leaves, stems, roots, and seeds of the cotton, especially the cotton plant. Then the ruminants are more resistant. Please remember resistant when compared to the other animals, especially the stable complexes are being formed with soluble protein in rumen, which are stable complexes. So these are with suitable protein, soluble protein in rumen, which are resistant to the enzymatic breakdown. So this type of the outer coat is made in such a way that the affected animal will suffer from the deficiency or toxicity of certain substances. So gossypol from complex with the metals like iron and also the toxic effects are also occurring whenever the animal, especially it's subjected by the feed upper to it. It also inhibits the nutritional factors. So the physiological effects of the free gossypol are reduced appetite. So if an animal eats ad libitum, the gossipal containing substances, then it may end up in toxicities. So one need to overcome by supplementation of the iron in sufficient dosage to prevent or the increasing the gossipal toxicity. Then the physiological effects of free gossypol, which are reduced appetite. So these will have a reduced appetite and inform that this feed should not be purchased during this situation. And hence, one need to be very careful, especially the document the substances in a such a way that it should cover the animal's body. Okay, that's one of the thing. And another thing is anti-metals. And anti-metal, the classical example is the phytic acid, then oxalic acid. In livestock, the oxalic acid poisoning is very common when compared to the phytic acid poisonings. So, the oxalic acid, which is secreted and which for which the animals are getting very high nutritious diet with lot of energy. Then, what are all the clinical signs of the oxalate poisoning? So, whenever the oxalate is absorbed into the circulation, the LD50 was known to be as 1 milligram per kg body weight. It is very, very low. Ruminants do have the capacity to synthesize their own protein, but the exogenous administration of the some of the vitamins like vitamin A, E, then the K and D. These are very essential in different parts of the body mechanism. For example, the vitamin A is required by the animal and the soya bean do contain the toxic substances that is end up ending up in the toxicity of an animal. So anti-vitamin E is eating sweet clover. Already sweet clover is an established phytotoxin. But including eating this such thing going to cause the fatal hemorrhagic called as the sweet clover disease. It is called as sweet clover disease. So this is severe hemorrhages will be present just after the consumption of the different feeds, especially the raw soya bean feed, etc. So the Sweet clover poisoning is a very commonly occurring poisoning in case of the large animals. Then antivitamin D is the rachitogenic activity of the isolated soya protein or unheated means most of the time the soya need to be heated to higher degree centigrade and the material will be only valuable after proper cooking. See, the anti-vitamin D is vitamin D is one of the most required vitamin, and it is responsible for the calcium homeostasis in the body. Then, if the rachitogenic agents, if they are administered, they are going to block the soya protein to be digested. So, as you know very well that the rachitogenic activity of this soya meal we need to examine which is the source it is. Then many of the compounds are as described earlier are different type of the inhibitors, but there is a mechanism how to reduce the effect of the anti-nutritional property of certain substances which are inevitable for us to make it to the cattle, maybe due to the continuous drought or non-availability of the this fodder or very high concentration of the concentrates especially. So how to what is the impact of this protease inhibitors? And we have discussed this thing already. They are going to inhibit varieties of the digestive enzymes. Then apart from this one, they also reduce the protein digestion. So they enter the stomach or the system of the animal and reduce the further absorption of the especially digestive enzymes need to act and the bulk or the things which are going to be asked for playing, then usually the management of this protease inhibitors, very more type of the food do contain the protease inhibitors. Then management of this proteinase inhibitor is that's number one, that is the heat treatment. So the immediately after harvesting, they need to be cleaned to the extent of well. Then they purchase the source of these poisonings on the doorstep of the farmers. So the digestive enzymes will be inhibited. The especially the even with proper study also a person he or she cannot get the top score. So this is one of the this statement need to be given by us so that we are later answered. So the protease inhibitors need the animal need to be or animal products need to be boiled very properly, then need to be administered to the animal. And another substances, phytases, a common ingredients of the plant, especially phytates, or it's also known as the phytic acid. Phytic acid, even though we need to provide the sufficient quantity of the gossipal cake, even in Bangalore city like that. So they always suspect the people who sell such type of the organic matter. So the proteases when they are called as phytic acid is, here is the enzyme. The enzyme is the phytase enzymes. Then also the feed supplements need to be taken care of that particular lab. So the next one is the tannins. How to get rid of the tannins, which are highly anti-nutritional in nature. So these are reduced protein and standard of the digestibility of a feed. Then management practice is also another important thing which get rid of the tannins. For example, overnight soaking of the sorghum, barley, or any other legumes in the water. Then dehulling means it is milled. It should be milled to the good extent. Of course, we are going to send all the samples in the future course. Then there should be a heat treatment should also be there. Then saponins, so they are very common ingredient of the leguminous fodder and also alfalfa, soya beans and quinoa. So they reduce the feed intake, disrupts nutritional absorption, and ultimately we will go to the person who is responsible to set this right. Then saponins as much as possible, as they are very succulent in fodder, then they should not be fed more than 2 kg per day to the animal. Then gossipol, how we can get rid of the gossipol is, the gossipol is highly toxic to non-ruminants, but not the ruminants. So the management of the gossipol poisoning, always we need to heat process that particular feed, then collaborated with some other companies, but we could not bring the product as on date. Then lectins, as explained earlier, the main source of the lectin is the beans. So everyone know what's a bean, etc. But these impact or by interfering with nutritional absorption of few of the nutritions which is present in case of the animal welfare world. Then oxalates, we deal with the oxalates as separate entity, and these are going to cause a delayed type of the death of the animal. So the management of the particular substance absorption is moderate feeding. Then calcium rich supplements to be provided to that particular animal or the mammal. At the same time, the moderate feeding is always required. We cannot avoid the oxalate containing feed because the paddy straw is the one which do contain very high content of the saponin, oxalates. Then the calcium rich supplements. If you supply the animal with too high calcium, then this may also go and end up with the different types of the screen programs. Then alkalides classified into the lupins. Of course, in case of the plant alkaloids, varieties of the plant alkaloids are there. Depending upon that, the chemical entity or chemical formula, then management of the such processes is always low alkaloid varieties should be administered to the animal. And suddenly we should not change the feed of the animal thinking that it may give more and more milk. That's not the correct factor. So the management of low, the pregnancy diagnosis kit is always it is welcome, especially low alkaloid substances need to be administered. Then cyanogenic glycosides already we are dealt. They release the cyanide causing the acute, subacute, chronic, and small quantity poisoning is a very good trend, especially in case of the animals. And to remove the cyanogenic glycosides, the one of the important material is the different materials which are carried by, or they are going to be destroying the cyanogenic glycosides are always the better drying, number one, followed by the properly managed membership is also not possible. Whereas the class 4 employees are also do have the awareness, especially we have to create lot of awareness among the farmers or the dairy science persons. And the another thing is the vitrogen, the proteins are also very much required for the production of different type of the enzymes, then blood, then the muscle, and many more tissues, which makes the animal physically perfect. Yes, the management leads to supply of iodine also. Then goitrogens is another category of the poisons. Then the particular source is also somehow interesting. Then the cruciferons plants, example, the cabbage do contain the goitrogens to the higher extent. Then, of course, mycotoxins is a big source of the toxins, and of course, they would have helped us. The recently held some of the ceremony it happened, and 2 or 3 times we have submitted the data. Even then, the work is not done. Whereas the mycotoxins, once they produce, if they are absorbed into the circulation to the greater extent, then the mycotoxin need to be prepared by the toxin binders are available in the field. So they produce the certain things, especially the mycotoxins. Then another thing is the proper storage. Improper storage means a fodder or hay should be properly covered. It should about 99 to 100% moisture is removed. Then some of our things are there to get examined. Then nitrates, the nitrate and nitrate containing plants are dealt in a depth, especially in case of veterinary practice, because the grasses like the Sudan grass. So this is one of the important cause of the particular person. So the avoid the rattling dress and avoid stressed forages, and nitrate utilization testing is also done. Then varieties of these anti-nutrition factors are summarized in the next coming slides for the ease of the learning especially. So we'll go fast. There's many type of the anti-nutritional factors are present in the feed and feed step. Then the nutrition is also derived from the certain these minerals like the calcium, magnesium, manganese, phosphorus, then potassium, and few more substances. So already we have dealt that group 1, this is a revision, protease inhibitors, then hemagglutinin. So hemagglutinins are going to form a clump with that of the different erythrocytes in the body, whereas the group 2 is glycosidases. Then the examples are the saponins, then cyanogens, then thioglucosides or glucosinolates are the vitogenic factors. Whereas the group 3 is the phenols, then they need to be corrected. And sometimes it is said that the cottonseed cake, if it is soaked overnight in the water, it will lose about 20% of the cyanogenetic glycoside. As this is abundant in nature and the quantity available is also sufficient, then the popularity should be given to those who save the life of the animal. And the group 4 is the miscellaneous group. So these are called as the anti-metals and anti-vitamins. Then the protease inhibitors, always they are called as the group 1 proteins. So these protease inhibitors do have two types. What are those things? The number one is Cunit inhibitor or inhibits only the trypsin, were highly selective in nature. Whereas the Bowman-Birk inhibitor inhibits the trypsin and hypontrypsin in the intestine. So the source of the protease enzyme is leguminous fodder and also the soya cake or soya made sweet may be used for that. Then factor influence the risk of the protein inhibitor are the temperature of the animal, then also the duration of the eating, then the particle size, and apart from this one, the moisture level also affects the increases the risk. So hemagglutination are also called as the lectins. The important source is the soya bean, castor bean, and other legume containing seeds, which cause the hemagglutinin. Suddenly they are going to clump. Then animal health effects that are caused by hemagglutinins are they are going to combine with a glycoprotein compound of the red blood cells, and these cause the agglutination of the cell. Whereas ricin is extremely toxic substance, the ricin, then it causes severe inflammatory changes in the intestine, then kidney and thyroid glands. So the factors influence the risk are the lectins are highly resistant by the destruction of the heat and destroyed by the steam. So then saponin, as told earlier, these are the different sources, especially from lucerne and soya bean. So excess feeding of these things, especially lucerne, etc., they cause sudden bloat and accumulation of the gas, and also lead to the dangerous situation of the animal if it is not attended in time. Then factors influencing the risk are the turpentine and paraffin are helpful in reducing the bloat, and it has got its own the advantages and disadvantages. Cyanogens, they are highly toxic substances like the jowar, Sudan powder, then linseed meal, then these develop acute toxicity of hydrocyanic acid. Then heavy nitrates like what this fertilization followed by the abundant irrigation of rainfall, many increase of the HCN poisoning in case of the crops. So animal health effects, these glycosides can be hydrolyzed into hydrogen cyanide by the enzyme and reaction can take place in the rumen by microbial activity. The HCN is rapidly absorbed and some is eliminated through the lungs and greater part is rapidly inhibiting the cytochrome oxidase enzyme and sudden collapse of the animal can happen. Ruminants are more susceptible than the horses and pig because the enzyme required for the release of HCN is destroyed in the horse and pigs by the gastric hydrochloric acid. Then another poisons known as the glucosinolates. Then the sources of this are the cabbage, and these are having very pungent, disagreeable flavor. Then turnips, then rutabaga, then rapeseed, mustard green. This contains these particular substances. So what happens if the animals do consume the glucosinolates is they are having the goitrogenic effect and goiter is not caused by the glucosinates but by their products hydrolyzers. So the enzyme known as the myrosinase, which is capable of hydrolyzing them to thiocyanate and isothiocyanate or nitrites. So these produce goitrin and thiocyanate lead to increased, that's called as the hypothyroidism and growth depression and enlargement of liver and kidneys are also observed in case of chicks and pigs. So how to make or destroy the glucosinolates? We need to do the water treatment, heat treatment and copper sulfate treatment to solid state fermentation. Then gossipol. Of course, we need to discuss this thing because it is one of the important source of the poison. Gossypium gossipol is present in pigment glands of the leaves, stems of the cotton seed. And factors influencing the risk is the gossipol form complex with the metals like iron and toxic effect can overcome by supplementation of the iron as ferrous sulfate. So the commercial production of cottonseed meal heat treatment decreases the content of glycol in the feed, or else overnight soaking in water also reduces the glycol content to some extent. Then animal health effects of the glycol is it is highly toxic to the monogastric animal. Then pigs and rabbits are highly sensitive. Horses are resistant. Ruminants are more resistant due to the formation of stable complexes, soluble protein in rumen, which are resistant to the enzymatic breakdown. So, if very high quantity of the gossipol is present, then only the ruminants are affected. Whereas the this gossipol, cotton seed cake, if it is put as 0.15% pre-gossipol, reduce egg production. Egg yolk will have an olive green color. Further higher levels cause the yellow pigment and liver and pain due to the destructive effect of the red blood cells. So in pigs, the gossipol, the dietary level of 0.01% reduce growth rate while 0.15% showed toxic symptoms. So the tannins are two types hydrolyzable tannins and these can be rapidly hydrolyzed by water acids etc. Then Gitanins are another things. So the condensed tannins are flavonoids, polymers of the flavonoids. So these do widely distributed in nature. Then the sorghum, mango seed cake, mustard oil cake, and lucerne meal. All these do contain very high quantity of the tannin, and sorghum contain high level of condensed tannin. So most of the tannins are locate in the seed coats. Then decortication of the seeds will reduce the tannin content, and tannins are astringent in nature, leading to poor palatability of the feed. Then they cause dry sensation of the mouth, probably by reducing the lubricant action of the glycoproteins which are present in the saliva. And the tannins are also bind with the proteins that are thus inhibitors of the proteolytic enzymes. And also very high quantity of the tannins are present, especially in case of the crude fibers, and the tannins reduce the digestibility of the protein and dry meat. Then fatty acid, the sources are the cereals. What they are going to cause is more rind, rough outer skin, and certain fruits. So this phytic acid has the capacity to counteract with anti-nutritional effect of the phytate by hydrolyzing phytic acid to inositol and inorganic phosphate. So these depress the utilization of several elements like calcium, magnesium, ferrum, zinc, etc. in case of poultry. Oxalates always causes the deficiency of the calcium, and the calcium oxalate will be formed and it is unavailable. And anti-nutritional factors are also include the anti-vitamin A, anti-vitamin E, etc. So the raw soybean also cause anti-vitamin A and anti-vitamin E are diets with kidney beans. So, varieties of the animal health risk factors are going to happen, and vitamin K anti is present in sweet clover, then with anti-vitamin D is present in soya protein, and respectively, it is going to cause some of the deleterious effects on the animal health, like the niacin inhibitors are also there. Then here varieties of the protease inhibitors, lectin, phytoestrogens, then saponins, goitrogenic factors, then rachitogenic factors, phytic acid, then mycotoxins, allergens, and lip oxidase are the important anti-nutritional factors. And these anti-nutritional factors are classified into different type of the substances already which is known. And the soybean meal contain trypsin inhibitor, then oligosaccharide, phytic acid. Peas do contain lectins, tannins, and oligosaccharide. Then the re-peased meal glucosinolates, tannins, and the phenolic compounds. Then lupin alkaloids. Then sunflower meal, tannins. Wheat do also contain phytic acid, polyphenols, tannins, and saponins. The barley do contain beta glucagon. And some wild edible plants also do contain the oxalate, phytate, and tannins. So, once again, these are all the anti-nutritional factors summarized, and the pulses do contain saponins, then trypsin inhibitor, tannins, etc. So, how we need to reduce the effect is by soaking, germination, cooking, then extrusion. Then cold plasma, increased enzymatic activity, etc. will be done. And these are all some adverse effects of some anti-nutritional factor. Phytates reduce calcium and ferrous absorption. The oxalate chelates the calcium cyanide. The respiratory inhibitors, lectins, prevent absorption of the digestive and products. Then protease inhibitors, as usual, they reduce the protein digestion. the phenolic compounds reduce bioavailability of many of the compounds, especially the things. And coming to lastly, the gossypol is a naturally occurring the polyphenol compound that's present in the pigment glands of the cotton seed. It is Gossypian species. So the average Gossipol content varying from 0.4 to 2.4%. Then this is present in the very commonly occurring diet, that's the cottonseed cake. Then this cause different type of the deleterious effect on the health, including the mild changes like loss of weight, labored breathing, and cardiac irregularity. Death is usually associated with reduced oxygenogenic carrying capacities. Then erythrocytes and circulatory failures will also be there. Then also it causes the olive green discoloration of yolks in eggs. So the classification of endogenous anti-nutrition factors which are generated in the body like hemagglutinins, food allergens, toxic amino acids, then saponins, then the estrogens are also anti-nutrition factors. Then phenols, then others are anti-enzymes, etc. So this is about the anti-nutrition factors of the animal feed, and I thank you all for the constant hearing if you are present in the meeting.